Welcome to the channel, everyone. I'm so glad you're here today. Before we dive into this exciting story, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let us know. Your thoughts and interactions really mean a lot to us. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a special story like the one we'll be sharing tomorrow. Now sit back, relax, and let's get started. She yanked a royal guard's pants for the gram, but it cost her everything. On a warm summer afternoon in London, the temperature hovering around 80 degrees, 23-year-old Sarah, an American tourist, stepped onto the cobblestone paths leading to Buckingham Palace. But unlike most visitors who were drawn to the grandeur of the palace or captivated by the rich history of the British monarchy, Sarah's mission was far different. With platinum blonde hair cascading over her shoulders and a confident smile, she wasn't here to admire the majestic palace or learn about its royal heritage. No, Sarah had come for something much more immediate: social media fame. Dressed in a tight tank top and tiny denim shorts that clung to her figure, paired with spotless white sneakers, Sarah was a walking billboard for attention. As she adjusted, the selfie stick in her hand, her phone buzzed with the notifications from her thousands of followers, already tuned into her every move. Her eyes scanned the scene, looking for the perfect opportunity to catapult herself into the spotlight. This wasn't just sightseeing for Sarah. This was about building a brand, curating viral moments to keep her growing audience entertained. In her mind, everything, even the historic ceremony happening right in front of her, could be turned into content. And then, there he was, standing tall and immovable, a royal guard in his bright red tunic and towering black bearskin hat. He was everything Sarah was not interested in: a soldier with a duty, a symbol of discipline and an iconic figure of British tradition. But to Sarah, he was just another prop in her viral video. He was the perfect target for her next stunt. As she inched closer, Sarah's excitement grew. She knew this was her moment. Whispering to herself, "This is it." She readied her phone, her thumb hovering over the record button. The camera would capture it all: the chaos, the laughter, the rush of social media followers flooding in, commenting, sharing, and liking her video. To her, this was just another piece of content, something she could use to boost her visibility and push herself further into the limelight. In her mind, there was no harm in it. She had a plan, a simple one: yank the guard's trousers down, capture the resulting chaos, and let the internet do the rest. It was just a prank, after all. The guard, standing motionless, was simply there to serve her purpose. Sarah was blinded by her ambition, convinced that fame was just a matter of creating outrageous moments for her audience. With a giggle that rippled through the nearby crowd, Sarah moved in closer, taunting the guard with a loud, "Hey, Mr. Guard," and a playful smile for the camera. She reached out, her fingers brushing against his uniform, then grasped his trousers. In one swift movement, she yanked them down, just enough to expose a sliver of white fabric. The crowd gasped. Some people laughed, others pulled out their phones, capturing every moment. Sarah beamed at the camera, laughing and spinning to face her followers. "OMG! Did you guys see that?" she squealed, her voice bubbling with excitement. Comments like "LM Fao, no way," and "savage" flooded her screen. She felt invincible, but that feeling of invincibility didn't last long. As soon as Sarah looked up from her phone, the royal guard's expression had shifted. No longer stoic figure, he moved with a chilling calm. Without a word, his rifle rose slightly, and his deep voice sliced through the air. "Step away, now." Sarah's smirk faltered. What had felt like an innocent joke to her was suddenly met with a cold, calculated authority. Her confidence wavered, but she tried to brush it off with a nervous laugh. "Okay, chill, it was just a joke," she said, raising her hands defensively. But the guard's eyes didn't soften. They remained locked onto her with a gaze so intense it felt like it pierced through her bravado. And then, the sound that would mark the end of her viral stunt, the sharp crack of his boot slamming against the stone ground. The noise echoed across the square, louder than any laughter or cheering. The crowd fell silent and Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. Before she could react, 2 more guards emerged from their posts, their movements precise and calculated. They flanked her, their hands gripping her arms with unrelenting strength. The excitement that had once filled the air was now replaced with tense silence. "You've assaulted a member of the Royal Guard," one of the officers said, his voice cold and professional. The original guard, still holding his rifle with a firm grip, stepped forward. "You are under arrest for public disorder and harassment," he declared, his voice unwavering. Sarah's world came crashing down in that instant. "Wait, no, this is crazy. It was just a prank," she protested, her voice trembling. But the guards didn't relent. The cold metal of the handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists, a sound that seemed to echo through the square. Her legs felt like they were going to give way beneath her as she was led away toward a waiting police car. The crowd, once full of laughter and cheers, now watched in shocked silence, some still filming, others whispering to each other. Sarah's phone buzzed with comments, but this time they weren't the likes and praises she had expected. Instead, they were full of scorn, the same followers who had cheered her on now reveling in her downfall. It was a harsh, bitter lesson in the cost of recklessness, a reminder that not every moment can be turned into content for clicks and likes. Some lines, whether cultural, legal, or simply human, are meant to be respected, not crossed for a fleeting moment of fame. Sarah's initial thrill of success quickly began to unravel as the Royal Guard's cold response settled in. What had seemed like a harmless prank, a mere joke for her growing social media audience, was now spiraling into a nightmare. As she laughed off his warning, thinking it was just part of the act, she had no idea how quickly the situation would escalate. The bright summer sun, which had been a warm companion on her journey to viral fame, now seemed harsh, casting long shadows over the scene unfolding before her. The guard's boot slammed against the cobblestone with a deafening crack that cut through the air like a judge's gavel. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The sound felt heavier than anything she'd anticipated. It was a sign that this was no longer a game. The crowd, who had once been eager to capture every moment of her stunt, grew quiet. Their laughter faded into a tense hush, as if they too were beginning to sense the gravity of the situation. Sarah's smile faltered and her fingers froze over her phone screen. The phone that had been buzzing with likes and comments now felt like a distant, irrelevant object. She looked back at the guard, who hadn't moved a muscle. His eyes, dark and unwavering beneath the brim of his bearskin hat, stared straight ahead. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking through her, as though her presence didn't even matter. Before she could process what was happening, 2 more guards emerged from their posts along the palace wall, moving with the precision of a well-rehearsed drill. Their heavy black boots thudded against the cobblestones, adding to the mounting tension. Each step seemed to echo through the square, amplifying Sarah's growing sense of panic. They didn't speak a word as they flanked her, their hands gripping her arms firmly. One of the guards spoke in a calm but professional tone, his voice sharp enough to cut through the still air. "You've assaulted a member of the Royal Guard," he said, his words punctuated with the weight of authority. The sound of his voice was like a final nail in the coffin, confirming that what had started as a viral stunt had now crossed a legal line. Her mind raced, but nothing she thought of could change the reality before her. "Wait, no, this is crazy. It was just a prank," she stammered, her voice betraying her fear. Her earlier bravado evaporated in an instant, replaced by the cold realization that the situation had escalated far beyond her control. The guard who had first confronted her stepped forward, his face unreadable. His dark eyes, sharp and intense, locked with hers, making her feel small in a way she hadn't expected. "You are under arrest for public disorder and harassment," he declared, his tone firm and unyielding. The words hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. She had seen this play out in countless viral videos, the prank gone wrong, the unsuspecting victim turning the tables. But now she was the one on the other side. She wasn't the one laughing anymore. The weight of the handcuffs snapping shut around her wrists felt heavier than anything she had experienced before. Each click of the cuffs seemed to echo in her mind, drowning out the noise of the crowd. The sounds of cameras clicking, the whispers from onlookers, and even her own voice, desperately pleading with the guards, all blurred together. She stumbled. As they pulled her away, her legs unsteady, and her heart pounding in her chest. The crowd, once eager to capture every second of her viral moment, now stood in stunned silence, their phones still raised, but their expressions cold. No one was laughing now. Some whispered to each other, their curiosity replaced with judgment. Sarah's phone buzzed once more, but this time, the comments that flooded her screen weren't filled with praise. Instead, they were full of mockery. She messed up big time. This is embarrassing. Wow, she really thought she was touchable. Her followers, who had once cheered her on, now reveled in her downfall. Their comments came in faster than the clicks of the cameras that had once documented her every move. Her dream of stardom, once so close within her grasp, now seemed distant, shattered by the weight of reality. The shame she felt was unlike anything she had imagined when she'd first planned her stunt. This wasn't the viral moment she had envisioned. It was something far worse. The officers pushed her toward a waiting police car, its dark silhouette looming ahead, a stark contrast to the bright, cheerful atmosphere she had walked into just moments before. As she was dragged across the cobblestone square, her knees trembling, beneath her, the truth hit her like a freight train. The consequences of her actions were real, and the fame she sought had come with a cost she wasn't prepared for. The cheers of her followers were now replaced by the cold reality of arrest, and her heart sank with every step toward the police car. The laughter and applause that had once fueled her ego were now nothing more than a distant memory, replaced by the bitter sting of humiliation. In those final moments, as she was shoved into the back of the police car, Sarah finally understood the lesson she had failed to grasp. Some boundaries are not meant to be crossed, no matter how strong the temptation for a viral moment. Her actions, meant to bring her fame and admiration, had only led to her downfall, and the painful reality of her mistake was unfolding in real time. The cold metal of the handcuffs biting into Sarah's wrists was the first true sign of just how badly things had gone wrong. Her legs felt like jelly as the guards roughly tugged her through the square, away from the scene of her failed stunt. The loud murmur of the crowd faded, replaced by an overwhelming silence. Her heart was pounding, her breath shallow as she tried to wrap her mind around the chaos she had caused. This wasn't the viral moment she had dreamed of. It wasn't the applause or the praise that she had imagined, but a humiliating arrest in front of a crowd that once cheered her on. As they walked her toward the waiting police car, she could hear the whispers behind her, the sounds of phones still clicking away. The crowd, once full of laughter and excitement, had shifted. Some faces looked at her with curiosity, others with judgment. The same onlookers who had egged her on earlier now seemed distant, detached, as though the fun had quickly turned to something darker. Sarah could feel the weight of their eyes on her, the judgment in the air as thick as the heat that pressed down on her. It was as if the crowd had lost interest in her as quickly as they had found her amusing. Now they were more interested in capturing her downfall than the prank that had started it all. Wait, this isn't happening, Sarah thought desperately, struggling to maintain her composure. She was still trying to process what had just happened. The plan had been so simple. Yank the guard's trousers down, make the crowd laugh, get a ton of likes, and then watch as her social media exploded. With attention, that was the fantasy. The reality was far more brutal. Her phone, still in her hand, buzzed with new notifications, but they weren't the likes and comments she had hoped for. They weren't cheering her on. Instead, they were full of mockery and scorn. What did she think would happen? One comment read, "She messed up big time." Another, "This is embarrassing." Her smile had vanished, replaced with a sinking feeling in her chest. Her followers, the same people who had praised her for every other stunt, were now reveling in her downfall. The laughter, the attention, the excitement, All of it felt so far away now. In its place was a deep, humiliating silence. The guards marched her toward the police car. Sarah stumbled. The handcuffs felt tighter with every step, and the weight of the situation settled heavily on her shoulders. This can't be real, she thought again, but deep down, she knew it. The reality of her actions was setting in. She had gone too far. She had crossed a line she shouldn't have. What was supposed to be a lighthearted prank, a way to make herself the star of the moment, had turned into something far more serious. The police car loomed ahead, the door open, waiting for her. Her knees shook as they pushed her inside, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. She had spent so much time chasing the approval of strangers online, but now, in this moment, it felt like all of that had crumbled. The followers who had once cheered her on were now the ones judging her, reveling in her humiliation. She could almost hear their voices through her phone, their comments growing louder, more unforgiving. Inside the car, the reality of the situation hit her like a ton of bricks. There was no escaping it, no way to go back. The consequences of her actions were now undeniable. It wasn't just a prank anymore. It wasn't just a joke for the sake of social media fame. She had crossed a sacred line, disrespected the royal guard, and violated a cultural norm that she had no real understanding of. The guard, standing firm and unyielding in the face of her disrespect, had only been doing his job, and yet she had treated him as nothing more than a prop in her quest for attention. As the car began to move, Sarah's tears blurred her vision. She had been so sure of herself, so confident that her plan would work. But now, all that confidence felt like a distant memory, replaced by a crushing sense of regret. She had never imagined it would end like this, being driven away from Buckingham Palace in the back of a police car, her once bright future in social media fame now hanging by a thread. Her journey, which had started with the promise of internet, stardom, was now a harsh reminder of the cost of reckless behavior. The cold, hard reality of the law had collided with her careless pursuit of fame, and it was clear that there was no going back. The viral video she had hoped for? It was already out there, but not in the way she had imagined. It wasn't a celebration of her success, but a public humiliation for the world to see. And as the car sped through the streets of London, Sarah finally understood the weight of her actions and the price she would have to pay for her reckless pursuit of viral fame. The police car rolled down the streets of London. Sarah's mind was reeling. Her once unshakable confidence had evaporated, replaced by an overwhelming sense of dread. What had started as an attempt to go viral, to break free from the ordinary, had spiraled into a nightmare. The hum of the engine was a constant reminder of her reality. The reality that she had crossed a line, one she never should have approached. The phone that had been a source of her power and validation now sat silent in her hands, its screen filled with thousands of comments, none of them cheering her on. She had once been so certain of herself, so convinced that her stunt would propel her to fame. The likes, the followers, the viral comments, they had all seemed like the natural result of doing something bold, something attention-grabbing. But now, as she sat in the back of the car, the weight of the consequences was undeniable. There would be no applause for her stunt today, only judgment. The crowd's reactions had shifted so quickly, from cheers and gasps of excitement to murmurs of disapproval, followed by stunned silence. She had failed to realize that in the pursuit of fame, the line between respect and disrespect can blur in an instant. To her, the royal guard had simply been an obstacle in the way of her next big moment, but to the crowd and to the world, he was a symbol of something much bigger: duty, tradition, and unwavering discipline. She had disrespected all of that, and in doing so she had broken an unspoken rule. As the car turned a corner, the sirens blaring in the distance, Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. She was on the edge of losing everything. Her social media presence, the brand she had carefully cultivated, was crumbling in real time. The comments that had once flooded her phone were now harsh and unforgiving. What a joke. This is so embarrassing. She thought she could just get away with it. The voices she had once craved for validation now taunted her with scorn. In that moment, as the car continued its journey toward the police station, Sarah began to understand the full extent of her mistake. She had been blinded by the instant gratification of social media, convinced that her next viral moment would elevate her above the consequences of her actions. She hadn't considered the weight of her actions, the responsibility that comes with being in the public eye. Now it was too late. The reality of her actions was settling in, and the consequences were undeniable. Her mind drifted to the guard, standing stoically outside Buckingham Palace, unwavering in the face of her disrespect. The way his boot had cracked against the stone, the sternness in his eyes, the cold authority in his voice. It was all coming back to her. It was a wake-up call, one she had ignored in her rush for attention. The guard wasn't just an obstacle for her prank. He was the embodiment of a responsibility that Sarah had failed to respect. As the car slowed and turned onto a quiet street, Sarah's stomach churned with the thought of what lay ahead. The arrest wasn't just about a viral video gone wrong. It was about the impact of her behavior on others, on tradition, on respect. She had thought she could manipulate the situation, play by her own rules, but now she was facing the consequences. The law wasn't something you could bend for views or likes. Respect wasn't something that could be manipulated for attention. With each passing minute, her sense of regret grew. The earlier sense of excitement, the rush of being the center of attention seemed so childish now. The truth was harsh and it was hard to swallow. She had disrespected a symbol of British tradition, something that meant more to the people around her than she had ever understood. And in the process, she had alienated herself from the very thing she had been seeking: genuine connection and respect. When the car finally pulled up to the station, Sarah's heart sank even further. The door opened and she was escorted out, her hands still bound by the cuffs. The crowd outside had thinned, but their whispers followed her as she was led through the gates. The cameras were still rolling, but this time they weren't capturing her triumph. They were documenting her downfall. As she entered the building, the reality of the situation hit her like a cold wave. She had lost more than just a viral moment. She had lost her credibility, her reputation, and possibly even her future in the world she had worked so hard to be a part of. The harsh truth was that her pursuit of fame, driven by her own selfish desire for attention, had come at a far greater cost than she could have ever imagined. In the stark fluorescent light of the police station, Sarah had no choice but to face the music. She had gambled on her own need for attention, and now she was paying the price. The lessons that she had ignored before about respect, responsibility, and the consequences of her actions were now impossible to ignore. And as she sat there waiting for whatever came next, the reality of her choices echoed in her mind. The road to viral fame had just led her down a much darker path. As Sarah sat in the sterile, dimly lit interrogation room, the weight of her actions pressed heavily on her chest. The cold metal of the handcuffs around her wrists, once a mere inconvenience, now felt like an undeniable symbol of her reckless pursuit of fame. The harsh fluorescent lights flickered above her, casting long shadows on the stark white walls, as if emphasizing the consequences she was now facing. She had gone from the center of attention, the star of her own show, to a criminal in a matter of hours. The sound of her own breath, shallow and unsteady, filled the space as she tried to make sense of what had just happened. Earlier that day, Sarah had walked through the gates of Buckingham Palace with confidence, dressed to stand out, and eager to make her mark. She had set out to capture a viral moment, but now that moment was forever etched in her mind, not as a triumph, but as a colossal failure. What had seemed like an easy path to fame had led her here, to this small, cold room, where the only thing that echoed louder than her thoughts were the endless voices of judgment from those who had once cheered her on. Her phone, now in the possession of the authorities, had been flooded with notifications, but they weren't the praise-filled comments she had expected. Instead, they were filled with mockery and ridicule. "This is what you get," one comment read. "She thought she could get away with it," another added. She had spent so much of her life seeking validation from others, especially from strangers online. But now, those same people were the ones celebrating her downfall. The realization hit her hard. She had gambled everything on a fleeting moment of fame, and in doing so, she had lost far more than she could have ever imagined. It was in that quiet, painful moment of reflection that Sarah began to understand the magnitude of her mistake. She had disrespected not just a royal guard, but an institution, an entire culture of discipline and tradition. She had failed to see the line between attention-seeking antics and genuine respect. The guard, who had stood firm and stoic in the face of her provocation, wasn't just a soldier in a uniform. He was a symbol of something greater than herself, a representation of duty that transcended her fleeting desire for likes and shares. She had disrespected him, and in doing so, she had disrespected everything he stood for. As the minutes ticked by, Sarah's thoughts began to shift. The viral video she had imagined, one filled with her triumph and the adulation of thousands, was now just a distant memory. The video, now circulating the internet, was not celebrating her witty joke or daring stunt. No, it had become a viral sensation, but for all the wrong reasons. It was the story of a young woman who had pushed too far, a story of recklessness and consequence, of a moment that was once within her control spiraling into a public spectacle of humiliation. The officers who had arrested her, their professional, demeanor never wavering, had done their job with cold efficiency. They weren't interested in her excuses or her pleas. "You've crossed a line," they had told her, their words hanging in the air like a final judgment. And they were right. She had crossed a line, one that she had not understood until now. The cost of her actions was far greater than she had ever imagined. It wasn't just about losing followers or facing public scorn. It was about the irreversible damage to her own integrity, the loss of something far more valuable than social media fame. As she sat in the interrogation room, waiting for the inevitable, Sarah realized that the lesson she was learning wasn't one she could have easily anticipated. There was no way to undo what she had done. No amount of apologies or excuses could take back the moment she had crossed the line. And yet, even in the quiet, dark corners of her mind, she understood that this moment, painful as it was necessary. She had learned the hard way that the pursuit of fame at any cost came with consequences. Consequences that no one on the other side of the screen could truly understand until they lived through them. In the days to come, Sarah's life would be forever changed. Her social media following would dwindle as quickly as it had grown. The comments would continue to pour in, each one harsher than the last. But somewhere deep down, beyond the public shame and ridicule, she knew that this was a turning point. She would never again be the person who sought validation through attention at the expense of others. The fame she had chased had cost her something far greater than she could have ever imagined, and though it was a painful lesson, it was one she would carry with her for the rest of her life. Hey everyone, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. Do you think Sarah's actions were just a harmless prank, or did she cross a serious line? Was her desire for fame and attention justified, or did she lose sight of what truly matters in the pursuit of going viral? Have you ever seen a moment like this play out in real life or on social media? It's crazy how quickly things can escalate, right? I know this story might have stirred up a lot of emotions, and I'm curious to know how you feel. Do you think people are too quick to chase fame without realizing the consequences? Or maybe, in some cases, the internet holds us all accountable for our actions? Leave a comment below and let's talk about it. Your opinion matters to me, and I love reading what you think. Don't hold back. Share your perspective, your thoughts, or even your own experiences if you've seen something similar happen. Let's get the conversation going. And if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on the next story. Can't wait to hear from you.